Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. This is the Matthew Dark Show. Now remember, hit subscribe everywhere you get your shows. Never miss an episode. Such an important one today. If you've noticed, we've had an increase of violence corresponding with rot in our culture. We have not the white picket fences and the clean yards and you can walk home after school and the life is just safe and pure and all that. We are not in that environment, say, of the 1950s anymore. We're in a very different. And in fact, as you move into our urban environments, you're moving into the third world environments. That comes from twofold. We've had an absolute removal of God from our culture. So we have no accountability to something greater than ourselves. We behave like heathens and the leaders allow it. And then number two, we have reformed bail, in which we now trust criminals. And in the case that we're going to touch on today, Irina Zarutsa, who was murdered on a train in North Carolina by DeCarlos Brown, who was on a cashless, no cash bond, had been arrested 14 times and commits a heinous, cowardly murder. We'll look at that as we get going. We have a fantastic guest, though, to kind of bring us up to speed, the evolution, the transition of, against criminals to pro-criminal. Ken W. Good, Texas bail attorney, board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. I want to welcome you in, sir, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me to talk about this important issue.
Well, it's such an important issue. And in fact, so when I look at an issue like this one sits actually on the heart, because I know that we are looking the other way when it comes to addressing the rot in our culture, the violence in our culture. We've got billions and trillions going overseas to help peace in other countries where we have absolute chaos going on. Now, you've been doing this a while. You've been looking at the criminal system for some time. I guess from when you got in to where you see now how we handle the criminal, I mean, just give us sort of a quick history lesson on how you have seen this thing evolve into where we've got in now, where some cities in America are third world cities. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I think I would say that we're repeating the same mistakes that we made in the 60s. In the 60s, we were feeling safe, so we were more forgiving on our criminal laws. As a result, crime started going up because we were releasing more criminals from prisons. And as crimes increased, we had no agreement. In fact, one end of the political spectrum refused to participate in addressing the problem.
Right.
And so we had a backlash, and that's what ended up with Reagan being elected with his war on drugs. And so now I would say in the last 7 or 8, 9 years, we've repeated those same mistakes. We felt forgiving. We're a forgiving nation. And so we want to, if we're saying we're being too harsh and there's science to support it, which I don't believe there is, I call it pseudoscience. And so we were forgiving for a while. And now I would say one of the reasons why Trump was elected was, again, a backlash on immigration and crime. And so we're in the middle of that backlash. And the problem is, the left swung so far to the left, they're not going to give it up. I mean, they're not going to correct. And so the swing to the right is almost as bad when it gets to the extreme, because the public is not going to support releasing everybody because the crime goes up, but they're also not going to support holding everybody because then they can't afford to pay for it. So we need to find somewhere in the middle that works and the public feels safe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And at the end of the day, we are pro-victim, pro the safety of the community. That has to be the number one. When criminals, and a hard luck story, because I know what you're saying. Okay, here's one I'd say, okay, I'm with you. I hear you. We have rampant marijuana use all over the country. I mean, you can walk in anytime, anywhere and get that. Now, if you committed a crime, say the year before all this happened, and you've shown behavior, fine. Okay, those are the kind of crimes that I want to look at on an individual basis. We're talking about something different, though. We're talking about violent assault. We're talking about rape. We're talking about car robbery. We're talking about home invasions. We're talking about, the physical assault and fear being inflicted on others. And that we're having compassion to. Oh, he's black, or he's from bad culture, he's from single family. We've made all these excuses in there.
Well, and then on top of that, we've decriminalized a lot of crime. We've taken felonies and made them misdemeanors. Then with Prop 47 in California, then the DAs in the urban areas stopped prosecuting theft under $950, and we've seen what impact that has. And the one that we're just now seeing a lot of in the news is commercial properties are defaulting. They're being foreclosed on. Now, we were seeing for a couple of years that they're selling for 30 to 50% of their value. That's because of all of this crime that's arisen, where you can't even be safe because of the amount of shoplifting taking place every day. But now we're seeing those buildings being foreclosed on. And so that's the next step. And I think that's where I have hope, because the mayors are going to step in. They're not going to allow their tax base to crumble, and they've already started.
I mean, if you look at big cities, Denver's an example, I'm sure Houston,
Mm-hmm.
all these major conglomerates, they are reliant on sales tax. It feeds their pockets. And when you have no businesses in the urban cities and you have nobody coming into the downtown metro, yeah, you're broke, you're out of it. And now you really do have to let the rats and the criminals just run your city. I don't feel like we're even close to the Democrat-led states and cities saying, yeah, we're going to deal with the immigration issue. They're still fighting. We're going to fight back
No,
on ICE.
no.
How can they get away with this?
Well, but they're having a civil war right now between, I would say, what used to be the far left of their party and the really far left.
Yeah.
And if you don't hold the line, I mean, all this stuff we've seen on the Me Too movement for the last however many years, that's all coming from the far left of the Democrat Party, and they're now turning it on each other, or they're turning it on their own party. And so, if you don't toe the line, look at Schumer, who's the Democrat leader of the Senate. I mean, I think his people behind the scenes are saying he's not going to run for reelection. Well, he can't win reelection because he's not violent enough. He's not in your face enough. I mean, who would have thought that 5 years ago? Who would have thought that 2 years ago? But suddenly the Democrat Party's in your face. And I mean, you would get blasted for saying this a year ago, but I mean, we have leaders in the Democrat Party today that would celebrate if something happened to, a Republican national leader. Absolutely. Or even the president.
President Trump, you wake up tomorrow, he's been shot and killed. You have jubilee from about half the nation, half of Congress, if not more. And that just shows, again, I
don't think it's from half the country or half of Congress, but the problem is it's from a very a strong, loud minority, probably 25% and growing of Congress.
And I think what you're saying there is, they probably don't feel it in their heart of hearts, but from a cultural pressure thing, you need to be fine that President Trump was assassinated. Don't show pity. I mean, that's the sick coldness that's going on. You can't show that remorse. Just
Absolutely.
Like we saw with Charlie Kirk.
Absolutely.
Oh, he was a this. Yeah, but he was a dad and he got killed. It doesn't matter. He was against it. That's the mentality. And it's demonic. It's held over these folks.
Well, but I think that part of the problem is the Democrats have outsourced their criminal justice policy and their bail reform policy to activist groups. Yeah. I mean, the Soros-funded groups, the pseudoscience organizations, and they're never going to admit they're wrong. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, this isn't working, so we're going to try something else, when these are the groups that are giving you money? No. Because if you were to even think about it, they'd put up somebody else to run against you, and it would make it personal. So, I mean, the Democrat Party is being blackmailed by the activist groups, and they don't have the ability to stand up to them.
And those activist groups are not operating under their Mother Teresa, the biggest heart in the world.
No.
They have a diabolical agenda to destroy this country from within. So that needs to be said loud and clear. Let's talk about this bail reform, and let's talk about what criminals used to do time for, meaning you are staying in jail until your hearing. You are going to serve the maximum. Give us that shift of how we saw this go from this crime is now not even a crime. This crime used to be dealt like this.
Look, the best example I can give you is in Houston, Texas, Harris County, where in Texas, if you get charged with capital murder, you're not going to get a bond. But suddenly, in the middle of this bail reform movement with the politicians pushing judges, you've got people who are accused of capital murder being released on a personal bond for a while, and then they were being released on low bonds. And so I started talking about, you got one free murder in Harris County before they would hold you, because you would murder somebody, you would get out, and then you would murder again, and then suddenly they were holding you. I mean, it was like the freaking dangerous dog gets one free bite. And I think that's coming down, and we've had some additional changes to the law to address that, but it's that's probably the best example in Houston, Texas, which is an outlier for the entire state.
So yeah, exactly. Because if they're now going to, because you always think of Texas as don't want to commit murder in Texas, right? You're going to death row. This is where we stick it to you. So if we lose Texas, And I'll just be
Well, I'm
super
not going to say
clear.
stick it to you, but just eye for an eye, Old Testament
That's
Christian.
what I'm talking about. That's what we have to go back to is that to me would be the beacon of at least we're going to execute the law to its fullest allowable extent, right? In other states, they've completely gone away from that. We underuse the death penalty in this country. We underuse life imprisonment. We underuse so many of our tools because either we don't want to pay for it, we're too nice, we have an agenda to ruin the culture. Let's say, I would talk about a violent crime. Violent crime, let's say home invasion, they're going to kill you, or you're going to give everything and you're lucky you saved your life, or armed car robbery, those kind of things. And the judge says $500,000 bail, or give us some ideas, some figures. So this criminal, who we know doesn't have a $500,000, he gets that set, maybe he gets lower. What is the apparatus? What's the mechanisms from there? How's he come up with this and get his, back on the streets? Give us how that whole process of this person without those resources commits a violent crime. He's given some kind of bond price. Walk us through that so we understand how they're getting back out.
Well, it depends on where you live. I mean, bail is regulated by the states, so each state could be different. In Texas, there's three types of bonds that somebody can get released on. There's, a surety bond, which is the private industry, and you're going to pay a premium just like you would on a car insurance policy. Then you've got a cash bond where you have to put up the full amount of the bond with the court, and if you make all your appearances, you'll get it back, less a small fee or less a percentage that the county keeps. And then there's what we call personal bonds, which is an example of these simple release mechanisms that are being used across the country. They're just being called different things. In Texas, we call it a personal bond. So a personal bond could have a $500,000 amount tied to it, but it's not. No one is promising to pay that other than you. So it's a pinky promise. So I promise you that I'll come, and if I don't come, I'll give you $500,000, but I don't have that.
Right.
You're never going to get it. So if I break my promise, well, shame on you for accepting it. And that's the problem. I mean, the public has a hard time differentiating between the private industry and a personal bond because they both have, financial amounts tied to them. They look very similar when you're talking about them in the press. The problem is the reality is they're drastically different. When the private industry has less than a 10% failure to appear rate, and a personal bond has a 50% failure to appear rate or an 80% failure to appear rate in Houston, then you can see automatically that's going to have a drastically different impact on the criminal case because you can't move forward without the defendant.
Exactly. And let's just put this as a case. So let's just look at this is the Irina Zarahutska murder. And so let's just see. But this is a case here, classic example where we have a criminal who's committed his crime. Now, this guy was also on a no cash bond. He's out. He had 14 prior arrests. He's there. And we have a murder happening right before us live on TV. Now, for me, I look at something like that and I think of vigilante justice. I think of, okay, you're telling me you're not going to deal with this person, then I'll have no choice. But the fact that guy was out on the streets, able to do that, that's America only. That is America's only concern in the whole world right now. There's nothing else. That we can't ride a bus. I mean, we know about the New York Cities and the Alvin Braggs of the world and all these people. Let them back into the subways. They're pushing people on that. Okay, that's kind of where we got our martial law. We're putting in the National Guard. We're trying to get order back into these cities. Basically, Democrats they're not qualified to lead people, and they're not qualified to lead cities. The evidence is in. You can't, I guess, forcibly remove them. You need the will of the people to say you can't govern us like this anymore, but they don't seem to have the capacity or the empathy or the desire to make that change. Is this going to have to come from the federal government and say, we are shutting down all crime? I don't care what color, what state, it's over. How does it stop? It's not going to be organic from a Democrat change of heart.
I think that's a really good question. The reason why I'm hopeful that it will change is because it's not sustainable. Right. I mean, it will, in the 60s, where the change came was from the inner cities, the black pastors, because they saw what it was doing to the young men in their community, and they said, we've got to stop this. And so the problem is, I think where I think part of it comes is from the work that Trump's doing is to cut off all these money that's going to these groups that are unbeknownst to us, we're all funding left-wing activist policies. And I think we've discovered that when their rent-a-mob is being funded, a lot of times they're being funded by our own government,
Yeah.
and nobody knew it. So I think that's the first step, is to take all that money away, and it's got to last a while. But it will right itself, but it has to go through at least one more election cycle. Right now, the Democrats lost in November of last year, and they're saying we lost because we chickened out and we were not left enough. And so they're going to put up a strong left candidate that's going to be militant. And look at what happened in New York. And so they need to be beat at least one more time, and then they will try to figure out what to do, and then they will maybe put up a more moderate candidate. And I think that's what happened with Clinton. When
Yeah.
Clinton was elected, in fact, if you remember your history, you're old like me.
Yeah.
George Bush the first was running for reelection, and at the time when people had to decide whether they were going to run against him, he had a 90-something% approval rating. But then the economy started going down. Well, Bill Clinton was the only one really that announced to run against him that was a good politician, and he turned out to be very good at, I would say lying, but at being personable. And I think that the party was willing to hide all of his personal foils just to win. And so I think it takes at least one or two more elections for them to lose, for them to even start to moderating, because the influence, like I said, when they've outsourced their policy on criminal justice reform, bail reform, I don't know how you get it back unless they just lose and lose and lose for a while. So we need that. And I tell people all the time, we'll go back to identity politics in a couple of elections, but let's vote law and order for a while, and send a clear message to one of our national parties that used to be very strong law and order that's no longer law and order. When Gascon, the DA in LA, comes, someone in his office says, well, we just have a difference of opinion on who the real victim in a criminal case is.
Right.
It's not the victim who filed the case, it's the defendant. Well, then who in the freaking court is arguing for the victim? Both the prosecutor and the defense attorney are arguing for the criminal defendant. There's nobody there speaking up for the person who was harmed. That can't last. Like you said, that causes vigilante justice. That's why you saw Bragg arresting the guy on the subway, because he wants to stop the growth of vigilante justice. And it's because he knows he's not doing his job.
Yeah. And the more that this stuff comes up, that's why we can never stop talking. And it doesn't have, I think one of the issues that comes up with these debates is color and class, so we typically have violence with our colored communities and in our poor communities. And for whatever reason, these liberals, they don't, they just use these people. They don't actually care or love, because if you cared about the Black community, and we know for a fact that 50%, and this is FBI stuff, 50% of our violent crimes are committed by about 3% of our population. That's 18 to 45 Black males. That should be the number one issue in America. Here we have a massive, Black people are embedded in the culture of America, but yet we're letting them erode and rot and slip away through policy, and nobody's fighting for them. We are fighting for that 16-year-old that's about to commit an armed robbery, that's going to do 30 years in jail, that's going to throw away his entire life. We're fighting for him, but we need Democrats, and we need the leaders of America that actually still do have some kind of decency in their heart to say, I can't hear any other issue right now other than the suffering of our inner city communities and the crime that's affected. That's got to be the message. And when that's resolved, we'd love to help out others. But right now, our house is flooding and it's on fire.
It's all politics. If you look at this historically, probably 4 or 5 election cycles, every 2 years, 6 months before a national election, there's something happens somewhere, and it's raised as the thing for the Democrats to use to say, minorities, you need to get mad, and you need to protest, and then you need to come out and vote in large numbers, because that's what they needed to win. And it worked. The problem is it stopped working because they've lost control of the mob that they've created. And I would even say that's the reason why they started electing what I would call is the true believers, because for a few election cycles, it was just rhetoric. They came out, they got mad, they voted, and then nothing changed, and they noticed that. And so the mob started taking control, and they started electing people that were true believers that would do what they said they wanted to do, like the AOCs and her crew. And I would say that we're now living with the consequences of the Democrats putting party over country for
And
several
that's where we're
election
at.
cycles.
And it kind of, you just said it a minute ago. We don't care what the candidate is. We just want power. We want control. We
Mhm,
saw that with
mhm.
Joe Biden. They were more than willing to go with Joe Biden for another 4 years because it kept it in power. In fact, they were so desperate to cling to power, they were going to go with Kamala Harris. Nobody believes in this planet that Kamala Harris
Mhm.
had the best interests of the country going forward and that we would be more nobody believes that. Although we do know that violence is a part of the Democrat playbook. There is no doubt about that. We have so much rot that's happened in our Department of Justice and the FBI and their involvement. And I want to bring this because I think one way that President Trump can really, he has to earn back some trust of the base. The MAGA base, which is so critical to the perseverance of America, meaning I think President Trump probably had 100 million fans going into that November election last year, the greatest political fan base, action group following we've ever had. This is President Trump. And President Trump, although there's been some great headline numbers and some great things, we're still looking for substance as the American people. We had the Epstein list go astray. We're working on that. We have Charlie Kirk's. We're still dealing with that. We had the Doge list, and we don't have any COVID justice. I think one of the ways that we can get, because see, for me, I'm having a hard time now. Okay, now if I vote, though, what do I get, right? So you still need me to vote. And if I vote, you're going to do this thing I asked you to do. I think President Trump has to earn back some goodwill for his base because I'm still looking for a winner. The gas prices, not cheap enough. The egg prices, that's not going to go far enough for me. He has a chance to kind of clean up this FBI Department of Justice. We're talking about the release of the Epstein files. We still know that the FBI, I mean, we have January 6th. I mean, we're now confirmed that the bomber on January 6th was an asset of our intelligence agencies. They're now matching. So we have this. We have more findings on the Thomas Crooks case, the Butler assassin, that they said he had no social media history. Now we're seeing that there is some social media history. The lying, the instinct to keep truth from the American people from the highest levels. How much of that really, though, can get addressed? How much transparency? We don't have the transparency we need. Or is that just sort of like a fairy tale that's never coming, and we're going to have to deal with the deceit at the top as we decipher how to take action down below? That's my fear right now.
Well, I think that's a good question. But let me address it from a different perspective. Think
Yes.
about all the movies that we've had made for the last decade, even longer. Look at the Hunger Games. And what does Hunger Games say about government? I mean, you should fear your government. You can't trust your
Yes.
government, and your government will kill you if you're not careful. And I mean, that's not a one-off. I mean, we have undermined our country in our movies for at least a decade, probably 20 years. And I think that's a problem. And we're undermining our criminal justice system. You were talking about how marijuana, is a problem or used to be a problem. And now look, I can point in Texas where one county you will not be prosecuted, the very next county next door where you will be prosecuted. I saw somebody get called to jury duty just recently in a conservative county on a minor drug, marijuana possession charge. And the prosecution was asking people, can you follow the law? If you can't, then we need to know. 40% of the jury said we cannot follow the law because it's marijuana. I mean,
Right.
all of that undermines the criminal justice system. And when, Schumer stands in front of the Supreme Court and says, if you issue an opinion that's the one that we don't like, then you're going to be subject to attack. And then somebody tries to kill two,
Yes.
I guess Kavanaugh and his family, and he'd planned on going to 2 or 3. I mean, and there's no penalty for that. And so
No.
our criminal justice system is undermined at every point. And that has to be pointed one direction, because you have to rule in our favor or we're going to undermine the criminal justice system. Now you've got probably both parties doing it because I mean, I always say the Democrats show the Republicans how to do it, and then the Republicans will show them how to really do it because they're always better at those things.
Yeah.
But I really think that we're in a catch-22 on that because the criminal justice system is already being undermined. It's going to be hard to rebuild trust on that because I think the biggest problem, the biggest issue with a democracy is it relies upon the goodwill of the defeated to operate. We have to have the consent of the loser of the election to really operate as a democracy. And we haven't had that. We haven't had that for many, many years. Do you remember when, uh, uh, what's his name? Rush Limbaugh
Yeah.
said that he did not want Obama to be successful. He hoped he failed. That was a huge scandal. I mean, that wouldn't
Yeah.
even be a scandal today
No,
because everybody says that. I mean,
that's the status
Hillary
quo today.
Clinton is the
Yeah.
best at speaking out of both sides of her mouth, saying that when Trump beat her, it wasn't legitimate. But then when Trump got beat, how dare him say it wasn't legitimate? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we've made these political heroes all over the country at our own expense, our own demise, because these are none of them care about the little minute things going on in your family's home tonight. Bills, worries at school. Great. No, they don't care about any of that stuff. We have made them, though, these political heroes. And I think it happened really simply. We have incredible inflation. We have sort of a breakdown in the family. We have busy, busy, go, go, go. We have, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about unsustainability from a crime level. We have unsustainability from an inflation and cost level. So we do have two terrible things kind of colliding simultaneously. We have a stock market that is absolutely, folks, if you've been in this thing and you are doing well, you've got about 30 to 60 days to make some move. You want to take a little fat off of that thing. We are not in the fairy tale that we thought. But one of these issues is organically the people. You know, I think what we have, the strongest thing is not our endurance, yes, and our faith is all important. Our money, we have all this money collectively as Americans, and we choose to put it back into the filth, the stench that is hurting us. So if we're buying Netflix, if we're going to Starbucks, if we're consuming Disney products, I'm talking about as a Christian American conservative person, the only way I see this going away is say, you can't have our money anymore. And we have to begin to take the money from them, or we cannot vote our way out of this. It's being proven right now. You cannot vote your way out of high inflation. You cannot vote your way out of crime. If you live in a city that is unfortunate under Democrat rule, President Trump means nothing. I will tell you this right now. In Colorado, they all told us how great it was that states, the rights to abortion had been returned to the states. Colorado is doing more abortion and transgender work today than it ever has. It has become a mecca. So all we did was take it from Texas and put it in here. We did nothing. We shifted it around. It sounded better. It's an organic movement. And so what I guess we're trying to get out to the listener and anybody who's still got a pulse and a heart, is there something out in their culture that you still is worth fighting for to you today? So maybe that is kids, protection of kids.
Yeah, but
Maybe it's
isn't
crime.
the lesson on immigration policy is we can fix it. We know what works, and if we have the will, we can fix it. Same thing on crime.
Yeah.
We can fix crime. I mean, isn't that the lesson of Washington D.C.? We know how to address crime, but the problem is there's no consequences on the leaders of our inner cities to say, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you keeping us safe? And until we have that, it's going to, and you know, a big reason for that is just all the lies. I mean, probably the best, and I'm not even going to say best, the worst at it right now is Newsom with his little PR team and the way that they just, I mean, they go for personalities. And so the next candidate for president for Democrats is going to be a personality, not somebody that has any policy experience, not anybody that has any policy history of being successful. It's just going to be someone with a personality that they can distract the public with.
And right there's the problem, because that's actually the issue is that when I hear Governor Newsom speak, I can feel demonic spirit. I can feel deceit. I mean, it's easy for me. I know you're lying. You're saying this, you're doing this. I can prove that. His listeners, his fan, that's the problem. That's just the wake it up, folks, because he's lying to you just like he's lying to me. Why is that Democrat base just so myopic, so in a trance? What's preventing them to get loose and say, I know you don't like Trump. I would never want to be a husband like Trump. I mean, I don't want any of that stuff, but he's doing a better job for you and your family than this scumbag would do. Why can't you see that? Is it pride? What's the deal?
Let me tell you, when Trump was first elected, his first election, I guess 2016, I reluctantly voted for him. Didn't like his mouth, but I would say he's not a politician. In 2020, I voted for him because I thought that they were all the impeachments were just to try to defeat him, and they wouldn't have defeated him except for COVID. I mean, 2024, I would have crawled over broken glass for
Me
him
too. Me too.
because of all the lawsuits, the lawfare, the trying to put him in jail for just having an opinion about what's best for this country. They could not beat him, his arguments, and so they decided to try to break him as a man. And I don't know of any other Republican in this country that could have withstood what he did. And so
None.
I was like, I'll crawl. I mean, I had a client tell me, he's like, oh, no, we should not have Trump. And I'm like, I'm going to crawl over broken glass to vote for him. Sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
DeSantis is great. He can be the next one. But right now, it's
That's
Trump
right.
all the way. And I think everything Trump has done, the reason why they have to say all these things about Epstein and everything else is because they have to distract from Trump is doing what he thinks is best. And this Trump derangement syndrome is
Yes.
real.
Absolutely.
All that is identity politics to the extreme.
Mhm.
You've convinced people that just because his name is Trump, they've got Trump derangement syndrome, so they can't support anything he does. And I mean, it's ludicrous because they'll attack him for things that Biden did much worse, and they don't see a difference. They don't see any
I know.
distinction. And you're like, okay, you've got TDS, and you need help.
You need TDS, you got TDS, you need spiritual breakthrough, you need a major
Mhm.
just reset on everything. And I'm like you, President Trump in 2015, when he came down the escalator with the lovely
Mhm.
Melania and he announced Mexico is going to pay for that wall and it was going to be back to, I was all in. In 2020, are you kidding me? There was no option. Joe Biden
Mhm.
was going to do,
Yeah.
sorry, it's not a question. 2024, it was even stronger. This was America's last stand,
Yeah.
and I still believe that. You are
Yeah.
not going. We and I are not talking right now in the same capacity. If Kamala Harris is the president, just not going to
Just
happen right
just imagine if the Democrats hadn't done their shenanigans and Trump had gotten reelected, there would have
now.
been a Democrat-controlled House, probably a Democrat-controlled Senate, and Trump would have been impeached a couple more times. He would have been an inconsequential president. But because they did, he prepared for 4 years. He studied and he did his homework and he has come out with both guns blazing. They can't keep up with him. And he's been winning much more than he's losing. He may peter out because he's not a politician, even though he's president. He's still not a politician. He says what he says because he's not a politician. He's also a billionaire. He doesn't care. And that's what kills him. I mean, he's not going to outsort policy to anything. And that's what kills him. That's what makes people hate him is because he can't be controlled.
I felt the exact same way. In fact, we elected in November. It was Jubilee. America's got a shot. I know for a fact half of MAGA at that time took their foot off the brake. We're good. President Trump has come.
Mm-hmm.
So we lost some passion. There's no doubt. And that's a dangerous place to get to, too, because you're still dealing with an enemy in the Democrats that are going nowhere. In fact, Satan doesn't sleep. And they are doing the same thing Trump was doing while he was on the sideline. They are coming back with a new thing. As far as Trump being, he takes no orders from anybody. I think that's what it brings us to. We'll kind of end on this because this is the moment for MAGA. Trump has done an atrocious job with the Epstein files in a communication way. Okay. Meaning if you go back to his early campaigns, or 2015, he talked about Epstein Island with Bill Clinton being on it 28 times. It was well known in the culture. It's not like this was a secret. It was being discussed. But the problem is that nobody was really in 2015, 2016. It wasn't like on the cusp of being released and prosecuted. Jeffrey Epstein was still alive and still, trafficking girls. We absolutely know that an addict like that doesn't just turn it off. His emails that have just come out, still a sexually charged perverted guy, right? Just the worst they get. Trump, he's not going to be able to get away from the fact that he was absolutely an associate of his. There's well-documented emails and photographs. We never suggested that Donald Trump was the major player in the Epstein files. And this is my true belief, and this is where I'm praying for him to have that moment to where I know that there's powers around me that don't want this information out. I know that this is going to look bad. You see Larry Summers. I mean, none of this stuff is a surprise when you've been seeking this information, but Larry Summers is so ashamed. Former Treasury Secretary, he's going to step away from public life because of the filth he was discussing with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, here we go again. So
But
Donald
isn't
Trump.
the lesson of this when you have an opportunity to be around people with power? I mean, I
Yeah.
learned this lesson a long, long time ago. I ran a campaign for a county judge and he won.
Mhm.
But then he turned around and became an ally of the camp that we were fighting against. So he turned coats, he betrayed all of his people. And so, I had the opportunity to still be around him and be on his, kitchen sink advisory board. And for a while, I did that because I wanted the power.
Yes.
But then at some point, you just have to realize, and I think what you point out is you realize you should say no when you are strong in your faith, because you're grounded and you're like, I don't need this to make myself look good. My relationship with God is what I need. I don't need the other. And so you will end up walking away when they betray the things that you were fighting for. So when these people had an opportunity to be around Epstein and all the people he was hanging out around, I've had several examples of that when I was much younger. And, it's like I moved to a new town. You had a whole bunch of trust fund babies. I was a new attorney. They would allow me in, but I was from a small podunk town, farming community. They would have not had anything to do with me except for the fact that I was an attorney. And so within a couple of weeks, I'm like, I can't hang out with y'all. We have nothing in common. That's what should be guiding people instead of, oh, I was with Epstein and I was with Bill Clinton. And you got to have some morals. You got to have something to guide you. And, maybe you can't say, what would Jesus do? But you could say, who's the most religious or moral person in your family? What would grandma do? What would grandpa do? And start there and then build up.
You're so right. And this is what, because here's what I'm trying to do is I want to soften this for MAGA, because see, Trump is not Christ. He is not perfect. He just happens to be the best situated candidate for what America needs at the time. We still have an obligation to support him. And just because he has been bold and leader and just doing things unprecedented for our benefit, mind you, because anything that takes us away from the deep state and puts us further away is good. But this is what I want to say for MAGA. We'll have to wait and see. Do I think Donald Trump participated in the physical acts against children? I don't know. That's never been on my radar. But I do know for a fact that it wasn't just Jeffrey Epstein. So when I talk about we need the release, we need full disclosure, we need Kash Patel to quit lying, we need Pam Bondi to quit lying to us.
Look,
Pam,
I agree with you on that. But the Democrats had complete control over those files, and that we're going after Trump. If there was anything in there about Trump, I really believe they would have disclosed it by now.
And here's where I say, because I appreciate that. And I hear so much of MAGA and the right say that. Well, if they had, the problem is that he is not a major player on the Epsteins. He did not have the 28. So the problem is if you're Democrats still trying, and Democrats are being told by the same powers that are telling Trump, don't you dare let this thing out. This is not Trump's singular decision not to release this files. But the problem is that it's connected to so many names. We just saw him this week with Larry Summers. Yeah,
but the Democrats are the one voting. They're saying release it, but they're the ones that voted, I think, in the Senate or something to not release it, or in the House. I don't remember. That was in the last 2 days. So they're the ones keeping it.
They are a part of it. The issue has been Mike Johnson, the vote that just took place. And Mike Johnson's been a complete disappointment. It's like so many of them. This was just so disappointing. You got all these names on paper. It's like, this is the deal. They were that special election winner in Arizona just got confirmed. And so that's the only reason it's taken so long. Every Democrat had signed for Republicans. Of course, they lured in Lauren Boebert to the office. They're against Marjorie Taylor Greene. They hate Thomas Massie. And that's, I think, something that MAGA needs to look at. Why on earth is Thomas Massie the worst person in the world? $20 million going against him from Miriam Adelson. And he's just saying, give us the list and the big, beautiful bill's a joke. And it is a joke because we're still going to have this atrocious inflation. So this is the message. And this is the loving message, because it can't work like this anymore, to where we hate Democrats and we hate rhinos and this small sections of groups. Is we don't know. And if President Trump has illegal activity on the Epstein files, then we'll have to let the courts and all that stuff. But for the good of America, if you're sick of crime, if you're sick of inflation, if you're sick of corruption at the federal level, this stuff has to come out. And I don't know if it's 3 bad seeds or 300 bad seeds, but you want to drain the swamp? The swamp lives in the Epstein files. Whether or not Donald Trump's a part of that swamp or not, I don't know. And that's not really what I'm after. I'm after these mega billionaires that spent time on the island that you told us existed. And now you're telling us there's no files, but now you're telling us you're going to release us. we can't have any more lies from this administration without some kind of action from the people. And 26 comes up. How are we going to show up in 26 if we're going to be betrayed like this? How?
And this is really a difficult issue for me because I think that right now, if you look at, okay, take a step back from the politics of the argument on the Epstein, just look at the timing. The Epstein argument comes up every time the Democrats don't have anything else to argue. So during the shutdown, it was the Republicans' fault, blah, blah, blah. Then suddenly when, 8 of them vote to open the government, then suddenly it's the Epstein files all over again. So, I mean, I discount it because of that. I think in my book, the only thing that the Democrats have gotten to stick anywhere near to Trump during the last 6 months has been Epstein. And so that's, I think, what's pushing a lot of that. And I keep going to, Trump is outworking these people. I mean, he's a different human being. He only needs 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night. His doctors have said he's been that way forever. I mean, a normal human being, not me, can't operate on 5 hours of sleep every night and continue doing what he does every day. Right. I mean, just look at his executive order on getting rid of no cash bail. I mean, he's looked at this issue and he said, this is harming our courts and harming. So it's a small step, but how has the left responded to that? How has our urban areas responded to that? They can't even have an intelligent conversation. And when they resort to identity politics to talk about something like crime in their inner cities, and when the governor of Illinois says we don't have a crime problem and they have tens of people killed every weekend, you go, this is crazy. And this is where I come down on the crime issue. When our friends on the left have to deny that it's a problem, then they have no argument to defend what they're doing. So they have to deny what you're saying about them. And that's where we are. And Trump is now highlighting that. And so I know the Epstein thing takes up a lot of oxygen, but Trump's doing so many other good things about crime. He's trying to address inner cities, which a Republican president would ignore because he has no benefit out of that historically. And I think he is doing it for the right reason. And we don't give him enough credit for that.
He is historic, and that's why I want to get him back on track. Don't care about Israel. Don't care about Ukraine. I don't care. I care about America, literally, only. And if that makes me a bad guy, please. But, you look like a bad dad if your house is in shambles and you're out running around with your friends and their families and just you're letting your house burn. So I say it's a commitment to that right there. You want to talk about a historic all-time figure in the world? It's this Republican white president that goes into the inner city and says, I love you too much to let you live like this. And I don't care about the other things that are going on. You fix our inner cities, that has effects and impact culturally. You can't measure. If you were to
and let's
that.
talk politics for a moment. The reason why they're reacting so violently against what he's doing and denying that it's any good at all and that it's all lie is because if they were to acknowledge that it's what he's doing is working, then they wouldn't win an election. I mean, if we hadn't done the immigration compromise years ago and that allowed California to be where it is today, the Democrats wouldn't win another national election. And so, I mean, that's what's going on the inner city fight is the Democrats realize the politics of it and they can't acknowledge it. They can't acknowledge that Trump is trying to do something good because if they do, they'll start losing elections.
Yeah, you're so right. I'm convinced that Democrats could never win without illegal aliens and mail-in voting. You get rid of those two things, you'll never hear from them again. And that's probably a good thing for the country.
Well, but when they say that, that's true. But then 5 years from now, we'll be there even further. So it's only a temporary solution for them to keep winning.
It is. And that's why we had to do a Me Too thing. Then we had to do a BLM thing. Now we have to do they're just going crazy. RFK says we should relook at vaccines. They say, no, let's go crazy on vaccines. Trump says, let's maybe back off on the Tylenol while you're pregnant. They want to take a whole bottle of Tylenol while they're pregnant.
Yes. And then you're like, well, look at the freaking Tylenol's own website where it says, we don't recommend you use our products during pregnancy. And they're saying, this is all Trump. He's crazy.
Exactly. And so he's got to communicate that better. I mean, continuing to, these are stuff that changes generations. When you fix urban crime, changes generations. When you fix the vaccine and the disease and the autoimmune and all these, you change generations. And since Trump has nothing to lose, and in a sense, nothing to lose from like more elections perspective, go all in for the American person. Tell these people with the big pocketbooks that are chirping in your ear to beat it. Right now, I'm so focused on our Americans. I'm going to get MAGA to the place we wanted to be 10 years ago. We've had a lot of setbacks and we've had a lot of chaos. We've had COVID. We've had fake stolen elections. God maybe makes it for the good, and turns it into what we have today. But we're not done yet from our work to
Well, but don't lose
restore.
faith next year. Don't lose faith next year. In the midterm elections, the
Yeah.
party in power always loses. And I think Bush #2 is the exception. And so there's a lot of funny stuff going on, the fight over redistricting, and I think all that is interesting. But just look at history. If we hold the House, then that will set the tone for the next in the final 2 years of Trump's presidency. If we don't, that's normal politics, and it will have a devastating impact on Trump's last 2 years. But in a normal second term presidency, you focus on foreign affairs, which he's doing that too. But I would say Trump would be probably impeached one or two more times if the Democrats take over the House.
You're 100% right.
Year.
That's the seriousness. And that's why I'm saying, let's cut out the lying right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get back to America only right now, because in 2026, as it stands right now, Trump loses, whether it's his fault or just the cycle. Don't care. He will be impeached.
He has to be impeached because then for the next presidential election, they have to tarnish his image to hurt Republicans. It has nothing to do about whether he's done something wrong or not. They have to do it to hurt him so that they can hurt the brand, so that they can try to get elected. They don't have a policy. They don't have a plan. It's all just, we're not Trump.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's my fear, because I know what happened in the first term. Nothing got done. Everything was impeachment based. Does Trump, let's just leave this with the listeners to marinate. For the better of the country, they've positioned J.D. Vance as, this is the heir apparent. This is going to be fantastic. 4 more years of Trump, 8 years of J.D. Vance. I'm wondering for the movement and sort of a rejuvenation, and then kind of Trump's own protection going into the midterms. Does Trump step down during this term at all, get a full pardon from J.D. Vance and hand over the reins, or does he fight to the end of this term here?
That would be contrary to Trump's personality, I believe. I don't think he would do that now. What would change that is if the Democrats take over the House and then, Vance wins the next presidential election, and so before he takes office, Trump resigns so that Vance can take office and pardon him. Yeah. Maybe, but I don't see that. Trump is, he's proven he's a fighter. And also once he's gone, what motivation does the left have to try to put him in prison then? Their whole thing was to destroy him so he couldn't run for president again. And then when he did, it was to destroy him so that he couldn't win. Once he's gone, they don't care. Then he can't keep them from being the president anymore. So they'll go to the next one. You can already see the demonization of Vance starting to creep out, where they're trying to say, oh, he's worse than Trump, and he's. So you're going to see that. Every president after Trump is going to be worse than Trump if he's, the Republican candidate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no kidding. And they'll basically, I'd say they maybe would want to stick him in jail or try one more time to fully put out the flames of the MAGA movement. And that would be kind of the final extinguisher. I don't know. I want to do this. So I want to stay more hopeful like you, because I've seen some things in Trump that really, they're not consistent with the 2015 coming down the stairs. He's not the same guy. But the substance is still there, and I think the fight for America still is there. So I want to clean it up. I want to stay motivated. And then you don't know. You figure if control remains Republican in 26, it's 2 years of you let it happen. You give it up. You don't have to hold anything back if you're the Republicans.
But the problem is we're in this cycle where when we change parties, the first year is totally to undo what the last president did.
True.
And we've never done that before, Trump, Biden. After Obama. So Trump spent all of his time undoing it's just, we're now in this cycle where, and, the candidates are more to the right and more to the left. So, especially with all the wins that Trump has had on getting rid of the leaders of executive departments, you get a Democrat up there during this period of their extreme. They've outsourced all their policies to activists on crime and bail reform. It'll be ugly. I mean, we have to have them to lose at least one more election cycle.
Yes.
And if Vance could be there for two election cycles, then that will be the end of this left wing criminal justice reform, bail reform movement. I mean, and it will end eventually because they're lying and they're all this pseudoscience. I mean, when they're telling you when we release more criminals, it will not increase crime. What they're
Yeah.
saying, if you look at their footnotes on a percentage basis, because when you release more criminals, there's more crime, but they're just doing they're
Yeah.
cooking the books on numbers, and it could be in effect a 45% increase on crime, but they're calling it but it's not on a percentage basis any increase on crime. That's just to me an out and out lie.
Yes. It is an out and out lie. And so our message is this: they're lying and we're committed to this. It can't be they're lying about crime, but we're over here in another country. You have a problem with the way they're dealing with crime, fix it, focus on it. And I think President Trump is doing that. Now, we're not deporting any of the illegals, but we have closed the border, and that's an expectation. So crime is going to be sort of just in our culture, in our atmosphere for a long, long time. 20 million people came over.
Yeah, but crime is cyclable. It's in a cycle. And we are, as we deport more people and we start increasing accountability,
Yes.
crime will reset.
Yes.
I mean, when we start doing what we know to fight crime, crime will reset. And so we just have to do that.
Focus there and enforce there, and people. I mean, what's so sad is this is the job of the American people to put these leaders in place. I mean, we can't just say, yeah, California, you're not doing it good. He switched out. These people have to say, I care enough about just the basics of life to say that person with what they want to do to a child, what they want to do with criminals, doesn't fit my compass. And maybe they don't have that in their life. Maybe people today are so without identity. They don't have a God. They don't have the family structure I don't know. This has to change though. It's an inside job. So we're going to continue to pray for not only President Trump and his heart, that it expands to America only, and just I'm crazy about America, but then the hearts that are out there against him, that they have some cracks and crevices that says, you know what? Who cares if I was wrong about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? I just want to live a better life. I want more money in my pocket. I want more safety on my streets. I want better for my kids in school. That should be a rallying cry. We should all be against 30% on our credit cards. We should all be against the taxes that we pay. We should all, I don't care if you like blue hair and the trans community, and I like the NRA and Republicans. We both hate the taxes. We both hate the infringement on our rights. And so it's going to have to be organic from the people that just says we're sick of the top. It's just not working for us.
Yeah, but we've got problems. We got problems on who do we trust, because a lot of the criminal justice issue is mental health. Yeah. And a lot of the push on the left is mental health issues trump the crime. And so they just get arrested. Oh, they got a mental health issue. We dismiss the case and we put them back out. And we keep doing that until they commit a felony, and then we keep them and we send them to jail. I mean, that's the problem. It's a part of the revolving door.
You just said the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The mental health is the thing. And so do touch on that, because that is getting used as, oh, you're a victim. You're a poor baby with a mental health problem, even though that mental health is, drug psychosis or whatever, deviant lives. It's not like you were just selected to be this victim.
Well, but look, our criminal justice system, our jails and our county jails and our prisons are the largest mental health facilities in the country right now.
Crazy.
And now with this criminal justice reform, bail reform, we're using that as a king's X on the criminal case. So we're kicking them out of the system, but they're not getting any help. And so
did that change? Did there used to be institutions that would they would say, okay, this is a criminal, this is a mentally ill. And so that was a place they would go, rehabilitate, treat that, take that seriously, return it. When did that go away? When did that get merged?
It went through a lot of cycles where, Reagan was credited with shutting down federal systems, and then the states starting to have a lot of problems with budget because they don't have a constituency for the mental health facilities. Right. And so anytime a county was having a budget crunch, they needed to cut money, they would cut it from the mental health facilities for the counties. And then what really closed them, they started having a lot of class action lawsuits across the country because they weren't funded. They have people that were either not getting a treatment, weren't getting sufficient food. You had examples of people dying in mental health facilities from starvation. So they were closed for that reason. And, Trump has talked about, well, maybe we need to bring them back. You bring them back, they have the same exact problem is, they don't have a constituency, and it's even more expensive to run today. I mean, I keep saying, to people that I talk to that mental health, if you and I could figure out a solution to the mental health, we could become billionaires overnight because
Yeah.
that is a problem that we cannot seem to find the solution to. And I don't know what the solution is.
If it's money, it's no problem because I know for a fact we've sent over 200 billion to Ukraine. I know we send 4 billion a year to Israel. It's just not a priority to our administration.
Yeah,
You say,
it's
well,
not a
there's no
priority because they don't have a constituency. Israel does,
right.
Ukraine does, and so
Yeah.
I mean that's the problem. And they have a
BLM
constituency. The
does.
mental
Yeah.
health doesn't.
So that
Yeah.
has to change. That has to come into our hearts because how many people? I mean, and I
Yeah,
think
but
mental illness is tough. How does that make its way to front?
but
top?
I say today your biggest chance of helping someone with mental health issues is reconnecting with family.
Yeah.
I mean, I have family experience with this. I have a sister who had a 30-year drug addiction to prescription medications after she had a car accident. She broke every bone in her face.
Ugh.
And and the problem is, we all got estranged, didn't have anything to do with her for years. But at the end of her life, I stepped in. She was declared incapacitated. She was in an assisted living facility. That was some of her best years in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say for the best chance for a mental health person, it's reconnecting with family. And you know what? If you're a Christian, I've got family issues going on right now, and we're like, well, we don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. But we're like, well, if they call us, we're Christians and they say they need help. I can't see us not stepping in to do that.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we get walked all over. That means we're going to do it on our terms. But I think that the same thing. I mean, the government can't fix the mental health crisis.
No.
We've got to we've got to get families. And you know what? We've destroyed families. So it's going to be the minority that are going to get reconnected. But the ones that do, those have the best chance of I don't know what what you would describe. They have the best chance of a fruitful life for the rest of their life.
You're so right. And it starts right there. And it is this instinct. And I trust me, I was a 20 drinks a day alcoholic for 10 years, and I was not connected with family. I have a different relationship with all of them now. And I'm so grateful there was a way back to them and a way back to comfort. Right. And so it is a restoration of the family. If you don't have a family, how do you do it? You must have it. You're not a criminal. But if you refuse to deal with your mental health issues, you will become a criminal that has to spend their life in jail. I think everybody with a mental health situation should be given the opportunity. Do you want to address this? You have high blood pressure. Would you like to address this issue? You have outrageous obesity. Would you like to address this issue? We like to address so many other issues in America. We don't want to touch this when it's icky, it's dirty, it doesn't feel good, it makes us feel shameful.
But we have to use the hammer of the criminal justice system to give them the incentive to seek treatment. So,
Fair.
I mean, I think Portland, Oregon is the example of you decriminalize all hard drugs and you enact all these treatments. Well, nobody goes to treatment because we've taken away the hammer. And so you've got to have the hammer of isolation. That's what prisons are. We're going to isolate you from the public for public safety purposes unless you will go to get treatment. And, if you don't have a family, I mean, you may not have a biological family, but you may have a family, a societal family that you can lean on. And we need to be able to do that. And this is a terrible, terrible situation, but, we can always have hope. And the criminal justice system, it's on where it's going right now is not sustainable. So that's why I'm hopeful, especially in our urban areas.
When you hit and it's like when you hit, how much lower can you go? And so I do feel like culturally, we can't go much lower. I mean, you're going to feel it so close. Even the elites are going to feel this policy's creeping up. And you see that in California already. You see it in New York, all these places.
I don't want to do an advertisement for a show on Netflix, but I mean, I've watched this series called Broadchurch, and it's about a small community. And, early in the show, they're saying, we have no crime. It's low crime. And then over the show, you start seeing all these things that everybody's been hiding, and every season they're investigating this horrific crime, and it's like, I mean, crime is everywhere. It's just, and I don't believe that. And especially, I grew up in a small community. Everybody knew everybody. Sure, we all have problems, but we know we need to go back to that small community feel where we look after each other, and we can do that. I mean, absolutely, we can do that. I mean, we're headed that way. we're
Yeah.
headed that way where corporations are going to set up communities and you can only live there if you're going to live by their code. Uh, and then we're going to have litigation because that's going to exclude people from our
Yep.
community. And there's going to be a fight about, well, we don't have to have criminals. And
No.
so it's going to happen because the public will demand
Yes.
safety. And so we can either work together as a community and our politicians can be in the front or they can be behind. I
Yeah.
keep arguing, if our politicians were in the hands of organized crime gangs and career criminals and they were just acting on their behalf in our urban cities, what would they be doing different than they're doing right now?
Right. Would they do better even? I mean, it's tough to say because you couldn't do worse.
Yeah.
And it's blacks leading blacks, and then they all complain, and they're all taking themselves into such rot. But yet, if we challenge that or say, no, we want better for you than that, we're a racist or we're shut out or we're going to, ICE can't come in here or whatever. This is just such a fascinating area of the United States because it really is as if you don't. That's what makes us different, is that we do have laws, we do have law and order, we do have the hope of the American dream. You don't have the hope of the American dream in the third world, okay? And when you produce the third world in our inner cities, which is what hope does that 16-year-old black kid with no dad, all he sees is violence around him, he don't have no money. Where's his hope coming from? There is none, other than if he can achieve some high level of gang status. And, it's pathetic. It's disgusting.
And what the
sad.
public does not realize is by and large, we commit crime within our socioeconomic,
yes,
our racial group. So, 50% of all murder victims in the United States are young black males. And by and large, the people that murder them are young black males. Yeah. And for some reason in this criminal justice reform movement and this bail reform movement, we've decided to put the rights of the murderer above the rights of the victim, and they're the same race. And as we do that, what's forgotten is, or what's lost is, the very people that get hurt the worst during all this terrible policy is the very racial groups that they say they're trying to help.
Yes, that has to be addressed, and stop flirting around it, stop dancing around it. This is an issue. We'll move on to other issues. See, I'm not of the opinion the United States or the federal government can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we need to pick things that are super critical. The border being closed had to be done. Okay. And that's it. Now we're moving into crime, but not crime in the sense of crime is bad and we want to stiffen the penalties. I mean, it's so rampant that we have to have like a city by city, community by community effort. And I don't care what it costs. I don't care what it costs, because what the government has told me is that they'll spend limitlessly on Sesame Street in Iraq, homosexual training in Zimbabwe. They've told me that the money exists, but it just doesn't make it to Americans and the people that actually in the communities and the societies that would benefit from it. So we absolutely need more police. Is that fair? More policing would help this. Correct, Ken?
Yeah, but we've got to also have more support for police. When Mamdani gets elected mayor in New York City, I mean, you've got Houston and Florida running ads in New York saying, hey, if you want to leave the police force, we'll give you a $5,000 bonus to come work for us. So, I mean, and you've got the New York police commissioner resign after the election because they don't feel like he's going to have their back because, I mean, the police commissioner was Jewish. And so, I mean, and I don't think he does. I mean,
no, he's against.
I would say that the Soros groups have changed their strategy. They're not supporting DAs as much. Now they're focusing on mayors. And so they've got Mamdani, they've got the Seattle mayor elected. They're both socialist. And so we're going to have that experiment. When it failed with the DAs, the one after the Soros DA, the one after the soft on crime DA was usually a law and order. So, I mean, the shelf life of these DAs that are just, I mean, these mayors that are being thrown on us is just 1 or 2 elections, and they'll be a piranha because that's what the DAs are doing. We're going to have the same thing. They're going to get elected. They're going to be told what policies they're going to enact. They're going to be given studies saying, hey, it's going to make us safer, or it's not going to make us more unsafe. And it's all garbage, and they don't know it.
Yeah, and they don't want to know it. I don't think anybody, we just don't have an appetite for truth right now in America. And once we get that craving back, Democrat policies, they just evaporate, right? There's just nothing substance behind them. Boy, Ken, this has been so good. I mean, I could probably go on and on and on about this because it's like, it's right there in front of our face. We choose just to look everywhere but this particular dilemma. What's all the places people can follow, catch, kind of learn more, support you? How can they do it?
Well, we have our own website called pbtx.com. It's the Professional Bondsmen of Texas.com. We have a blog where we highlight important criminal justice stories. We also have our own podcast. There's a link on the menu, or you can just go to thebellpost.com. We just cover criminal justice stories on our podcast. I think we're in the top 10 criminal justice podcasts in the world, but I think it's a small audience. But that's all we do, and this is something that we discovered very early. If we're not telling this side of the story, no one is. With the pseudoscience, with the stories coming out before the election saying crime's not going up, just look at the FBI statistics. And then I wrote a story in October saying, here's all the reasons why the FBI statistics are not accurate. And then 10 days later, they were updated and suddenly they show crime increasing. And then suddenly the Democrats no longer talked about crime. Now they just talked about Trump being a fascist. And you understand where things fall into place. And so when Trump is doing things good, they're going to be throwing just crap on him and see what sticks. Right now, it's the Epstein stuff. And probably the most important thing he's done is to highlight that we need to get rid of these no cash bail policies, because if you don't want people to come to court, then don't put them on a private surety bond, because they won't come to court. And then if you come to court, you can't resolve their case. You get backlogs, you get pressure to dismiss cases, and criminals see that as green lights to commit more crime, which is what's happening in our urban cities. We know what to do. We know how to stop it. And we just have to have the political will to do it.
Political will to do it. You absolutely need as many Christian and American attorneys that can help facilitate their role. We don't have enough of those people being bold in their faith and using it in their profession. So I want to commend you and thank you for the work you're doing. Such important work, keeping our folks safe. Our guest has been Ken W. Good out of Texas, doing amazing work on the bail reform. We're going to pray for President Trump to continue to lean into that. And we'll do this again sometime very